Welcome to the Ultimate Coach Podcast, Conversations from Being, inspired by the book, The Ultimate Coach, written by Amy Hardison and Alan Thompson. Join us each week with the intention of expanding your state of being, and your experience will be remarkable. Remember, this is a podcast about being. It is a podcast about you. To explore more deeply, visit theultimatecoachbook.com. Now, enjoy today's conversation from Being.
Hello and welcome. My name is Philip Bartu, and you're listening to the Ultimate Coach Podcast. I am excited and enthusiastic to introduce one of the most enthusiastic people that I have ever met. Today, we are talking with Dave Orton. Now, the day Dave walked into Steve Hardison's office, he was greeted with the words of, "Dave, you're the most pretentious son of a bitch I've seen in my entire life." I'm going to ask you about that for sure, Dave. But the way I've experienced you is as the most graceful and, what is the word? You have this way of championing people, of seeing the greatness. You are a master acknowledger. And that's really what caught my attention. In fact, I've never seen anyone do it the way you do. You have a gift in seeing what there is in people that they are not even really able to see in themselves. And the way that you do it and speak to it is so eloquent and beautiful. So I want to start with that, Dave. Welcome to the show, and great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Philip. Yeah, I'd like to just start off by acknowledging you, if I may. Thank you by the way, for that powerful acknowledgement. Philip, who you are for me is a brilliant beacon of light, kindness, lovingness, power. Coach, you're inspiring, you're inspired. I see you as the divine man, like as in one in whom or through whom the light of the divine shines. I am moved by the difference that you make with people and your willingness to have be with time with anyone that's in our group. And I'm presuming, and I assert that this is how you are in the world. You're ready to talk with and love on anyone that wants to reach out and be with you. And that is so powerful and so rare in this world. Do you get that in your presence, I get to be a great one with you?
That's so beautiful. And you know, we've spoken a couple of times, but your just your ability to see that is remarkable. And that's just, and you know, thank you. I really appreciate and receive every word you say. And this is the amazing thing about Dave. This is what Dave can do with just about any person he meets, even people like I've seen you acknowledge people from just maybe a comment they've written, and you're able to deeply acknowledge it. Where did that come from? And were you always like that, Dave, or is that something that you have learned and developed and mastered over time?
Well, I definitely didn't come here with it. How did that occur? Well, the context for my life growing up was when I was very small. There was a song that and I still love it. It's called "I Am a Child of God." And the context that I am, and we all are, children of the great Creator, means that everyone that I see, everyone I look at, even the people that are mean to me, are at some level my brothers, my sisters, and that deep spirit connection. Once one can tune into that. So for like 20 years or so, it was theoretical. Like I knew with my mind that I'd been taught this, and occasionally I'd get glimpses of, oh yeah, I see that person as a soul sister, a soul brother. when I went on a LDS mission to Russia back in the mid 90s. It was kind of a wild time. They call it the wild times. Yeah. In Russia, when it was kind of mobocracy, and it could be scary. I mean, I got robbed the first day I was there and had a stomach ache for the first 3 months. But after that, I learned how to love these people that I had a terrible fear of. And the lovingness came from this context of, these are my brothers, these are my sisters. And from that context emerged this desire and ability to see them as that. There is I did a thing called the Landmark Forum on that time when Steve greeted me with, "You're the most pretentious son of a bitch I've ever seen." Yes. His parting words were, as I was leaving his house, "Get your ass into the Landmark Forum as soon as you can." And so 10 minutes later, I was registered into the Landmark Forum. I had to call Penny and we have an agreement not to spend a certain amount of money beyond before we have a conversation one with another. But yeah, she said yes. So in 10 minutes, I was registered in the Landmark Forum. And part of the acknowledgement is something that leaders in Landmark are trained in. Right. And I was a leader in Landmark. So there was some actual training. And
yeah,
there is something that goes beyond the training. Like there's something powerful and creative in acknowledging a person from the possibility of their greatness.
Oh, I can really see that, and especially the way that you do it. It's profound. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip.
So Dave, I when I was just reading this this passage that we kind of joke about when you were called a son of a bitch. What struck me is what happened afterwards. That you said it was really not, you didn't feel it was a judgment, but it was actually an act of love. Say more about that.
It was the strangest experience. Strange meaning that I had never encountered it before. This being told I love you with the words, "You're the most pretentious son of a bitch I've ever seen in my life," caught me completely off guard. And Steve, it occurs to me like the goal that he had in that was to shake me up and stir me such that I was no longer stuck in the frame of mind that I came to his house with. And that definitely succeeded. But the lovingness that was behind it was very remarkable. And since then I've found there are other people, Steve, when Steve is chewing you out, he is loving on you. When he's telling you that you've got to get your shit together, what he is saying is, "I love you. I'm telling you this from love." And it can feel, the way that one of the people in the book described it was, he will cut you open with a samurai sword and then lovingly heal you back together, and bring you to a place of peace. It's not a direct quote, but
right.
But that's the experience, right?
Yeah, powerful. And so what happened in those 3 hours? What do you remember from them?
Well, so with Steve, it's very difficult to recall exactly what was said. He lets you take notes if you want to. And I think I did. That first time I met with Steve was 9 years ago. And then I've had an opportunity to I hired him for a 10-hour agreement in 2017, which I remember a lot more of that. But even that, it's like kind of like I move into this space in his office, this sacred space that he's created and maintains the sacredness of. And it's kind of like the memory centers of the brain are slightly superseded by the experiential "be with me now" sort of thing. I can tell, here's what I remember from that first session. We went through a great deal of the judgments that I had about myself, the world, the way it should be. And it was interesting because, see, Steve and I share the same belief system.
Right.
And a lot of the judgments that I had about myself and the way the world worked and the way everything should be came from unconscious judgments that I'd made about myself in the context of what I heard talked about or said when I was very small in the, attending Sunday school.
Just to make it more specific, more real, is there something?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in Idaho where it was about 85 to 90% LDS. It was very, very concentrated. It was not a homogenized.
When you say LDS, what does that mean?
Yeah, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
So the commonly known as Mormons, although we're we don't really go by that name. That's what we're known for. The Book of Mormon is one of the things that we believe in. But so here's an example. Is one of the principles that we have in that belief system is a thing called the word of wisdom, and I don't drink alcohol, don't smoke, don't drink even black tea or coffee, and those are
these are for religious reasons.
Yes, correct. It's religious agreements that I have made with myself and my wife. And so here is the logical leap that I went through as a child. Okay, that was unconscious. Everyone that smokes is going to hell.
Right. Yeah.
And can you see how incongruous that is?
Oh my God, so much. And it creates an air of superiority.
Exactly. And even beyond that, go ahead, Philip.
No, I'm just I just want to just say how I grew up in Singapore on the other side of the world. And I had the same thing. And it wasn't that if you smoke, you go to hell, but if you take any drugs, you will die a painful, long, slow death. And that's a given. And so that I remember Singapore is probably the most anti-drug state in the world. And there were these big posters of basically dead bodies with a tag saying overdosed. And so you think, so to me, when as a 13-year-old, in the same way as your head was creating a story of if you smoke, you go to hell, I was like, well, if you take any form of drugs, you will die within minutes. Like that's, and that was my story. And that looked real.
Right.
So yeah, I can totally relate to the conditioning that creates, even though it's not a negative, like it does, it's supposed to keep us safe and keep us, healthy, and yet still it's deep conditioning.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, Philip, nobody ever told me that if you smoke, you'll go to hell.
Right.
I made that up completely on my own.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. When I the first time I saw a sign that says "Don't drink and drive," I always thought it's because you're going to spill your drink.
That's so great. Of course, that's logical.
That's what it meant to me. Don't drink and drive. You're going to spill your drink. You got to be careful. You don't want to drink and drive. So as kids, it's so easy to make up stuff. You hear something and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to go to hell. Yeah. And so that stuck with you for how long? Like what? This became a belief system as an adult.
It did, and so that one broke up when I went to Russia, and there is in the 1990s, there were a lot of people in Russia smoked. Like, it was not at all looked down on. You could smoke in restaurants with no problem, and the Russians don't. The Russian cigarettes
and alcohol.
And alcohol, yeah. There was vodka on every corner, and
you were faced with the devil.
I've never had a strong urge to try alcohol or smoke at all, because and this is really funny. And I enjoy the smell of a good cigar. Like somebody smoking a cigar around me, unless I'm trying to eat, it's like, oh wow, that smells like that smells like rich Corinthian leather or some other made up thing that doesn't really exist but sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, but to answer your question more deeply, so that's the sort of thing that came up and was recognized, and it was no longer hidden in the unconscious judgment part of my mind.
Yeah.
Steve was able to bring those up and say, look, Dave, you're killing people off for things that they have no agreement not to smoke. Just because you have an agreement not to do that doesn't mean that you get to cancel them as of having any value. And I saw that in Russia as well, but it was still kind of on the down low inside of my mind. But there were a bunch of them, and the process was we identify them, and then he introduced this idea of radical self-forgiveness that is one of the tenets of the University of Santa Monica. And so we go through this cycle where, he taught me how to forgive myself completely, wholly, radically, not waiting for God or man or anybody else, which, it was like, it's different. If I'm trying to get forgiveness for a sin that I've committed, an agreement that I've broken, a religious agreement that I've broken, that's one thing. That's not in this realm. Forgiving myself for judgments is like, forgiving a toddler who's learning how to walk for falling down. There's nothing to forgive. And yet we pretend like this judgment is real. And so it makes sense to be able to go through and forgive oneself to forgive myself for these judgments that I had. And they were really judgments that I made against myself that then showed up with how I projected reality as I looked around and saw whatever it was that I was seeing. So that, I don't know, anything to say on that?
Well, when I hear the word forgiveness, and I can see how this has been really transformative and powerful for you, but there's something I'm uncomfortable with that. So I'm curious to get your take on this, because when I hear the word forgiveness, I usually associate that to something that has been wrong. So there's like, I forgive for some sort of wrongdoing. And when I hear the judgments that I have, what occurs to me is not so much forgiveness, but acceptance. And in a way, it's like, I notice the negative judgments. Now I could either forgive myself, or I can accept that that's just thought passing through me. And in that acceptance, there is an allowing. And it's clearly a superior way of doing it than forgiving. I'm kidding about the superior, but I want to just.
Are you trying to make me laugh here?
I was trying to be a pretentious son of a bitch with you.
Mission accomplished. No, just kidding.
I'm joking, but I am curious to hear like what's. Of course, these are just words, right? But what are you hearing in that?
Well, let me give you an example of exactly what you said, at least how it landed over here with me.
Yeah.
Okay? So when I lost my job in 2016 and went through a year and a half of deep depression, and after I came through that, it was the strangest thing, Philip, because I retained a connection to the divine while I was going through what occurred to me as the depths of hell. Okay. And the message from the divine was keep going. It was like Winston Churchill.
Oh yeah.
He said, you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to serve my way out of depression. I was trying to meditate my way out of depression. I was trying to exercise my way out of depression. I was trying to pray my way out of depression. I was trying to eat my way out of depression. I was trying to stimulate myself out of depression. And none of that just doesn't do it. And I don't have the answer. Everyone's journey through the dark night of the soul is their journey.
Right. And
I can tell you that it was during that time I had the opportunity to go spend 10 hours with Steve. And I was trying, and this is the funniest thing. I was going to see Steve to get myself out of depression. And that wasn't what, Steve wasn't there to fix that for me.
Yeah.
What we did was we created who I was as a possibility.
Beautiful.
And took me about 6 months later, I got, a job with the company I work with now, and and I came out of it. And the forgiveness from the.
Yeah, keep going. I want to hear that part. The forgiveness.
Well, from the perspective of forgiveness, this is, how do you forgive yourself for having been depressed? And I think that what you said is the way, or a very powerful way, at least if it's not the only one, right? When I was able to recontextualize the loss of my job and the cycle of depression that I went through, along with all the positive and negative things that happened during that time, the good, the bad, the wrong, the beautiful, the ugly, however they occurred to me, recontextualize it as a gift, as a divine path, my path to becoming who it is that I'm meant to be here, and to be able to have compassion for people who are dealing with depression, anxiety, mental illness, bipolar, whatever it is, on a level that I never, it occurred to me, they occurred to me as not me. Like that stuff doesn't happen to me until it did. And then I'm like, wow, I had no idea that that's what you guys were dealing with. Yeah. No wonder. Compassion, deep well compassion, from which I come when I'm dealing with anybody that is dealing with that chronic pain. I mean, it's my soul needed to go through that so that I could show up powerfully, deeply, understandingly, and it's, one of the things that I say I am a disciple of Jesus Christ as expressed through Dave Orton. And for me, Jesus Christ is somebody who went through and felt everything, went through the depths of hell as somebody who totally didn't deserve it, and experienced what he experienced so that he could have compassion for us, so that he could be an example of that lovingness, regardless of where we are, who we are, what we've done. And that's how it kind of shows up for me, is that became that experience of depression and going through hell became sacred, holy, became a light from which I can, bless and serve others. And for me, that's what I hear when you say that.
Yeah. And honestly, Dave, that's actually a perfect answer to the first question I asked you about your capacity to acknowledge is you have access to a level of self-compassion that is so profound from your story, from your experience, from your depression. There is that place in you that knows the dark, the light, that's felt it, been with it, moved through it. And you recognize that in every other human being. It is your experience, your life experience, and how you've worked through it. That is the sacredness of your being.
Thank you. I accept that completely. I am that. Thank you, Philip. And I, by the way, noticed that same depth in you, although your path, I'm sure, was different.
It was all rainbow and sunshine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I never really considered myself depressed, because for me, depression meant just crying all the time and feeling very, very down. And actually what I was, and this is something I discovered in coaching 8 years ago, I was diagnosed as a flatliner. Have you ever heard of that word, a flatliner?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it means.
So I was introduced to this idea that there are two kind of people in the world: the ones that are able to feel everything, and the ones that are just kind of have a very small range of emotion. And for me, that was my depression. My range of joy was limited, and my range of uncomfortable feelings and grief and sadness was limiting. And I remember even early on as a 15-year-old, attending my cousin's funeral, who surprisingly died of cancer at the age of 9, and trying so hard to cry because I was the only kid in that funeral that wasn't crying, and feeling so like something's wrong with me. And I don't know where that comes from. And over the years, I'm like a baby boy, I just, I will cry. Oh, it was actually in my very first coaching conversation. I remember he said, "What do you want to get?" I just want to cry. And what I really wanted was just to feel. And I was so cut off from myself and from my emotions. And actually, for me, what I got to understand about depression is your inability to really feel, and how that's how I lived until I was about, 30, when I really, really started just to be able to access more of my emotions. So I'm curious, was that like that for you, or what are you hearing from that story?
Yeah, well, so thank you so much for sharing that, Philip. For what I hear in that is numbness, and that occurs to me like the default way that humans survive. Like if you are somebody who is being assaulted, a child who's living in an environment where they are being assaulted every other day or something, where it's just nonstop and common. The default survival mode is to go numb, or to freeze, or to, there's the three: the fight or flight, or, or freeze, and the freezing includes this thing where, in order to, it occurs to me, I'm not sure this is actually true, but it occurs to me like part of that freezing is numbing down the emotions such that you do not react. And if we don't address that, if a person just lives with that, then that becomes the default way of being. And I don't know if that's really how it is. And I can tell you that in the coaching conversations that I've had, that is as common as clay, and it doesn't even have to be, rape or sexual abuse or a beatings, physical beatings or anything. It can be somebody looked at me funny and I made that mean that I was unworthy, and therefore I'm shutting down. I mean, it's we humans are these experience generating machines, meaning making machines. Thank you, Landmark, for for that term, Werner Erhard. But that's what I hear. And for me, it was not, I suffered. Like I was still able to feel, I wasn't able to feel joy or happiness.
Okay.
So those were numbed, and the capacity to feel, hurt and pain and worry seemed like that was expanded. And when I was going through my stuff, and what you've described definitely fits as depression. There's no wrong way to go through depression. There's no wrong feelings. It's not like, for me, it occurs like it's your experience, and however you go through it and whatever you experience is valid.
Yes. And I think the point I'm making here is that I think depression has become a socially accepted way of being in our society. And there's a lot of, I'm looking around and seeing a lot of people who are just have learned to live and function from that state of being. And I know that because I was like that. And in that moment, I never even imagined or would label myself as depressed. Yet I was deeply, I was like functionally depressed. And that was just very, as I look back at it now, I can see that. But if you had said that to me, I would have massively resisted that and been like, no, that's not true. So it's just interesting how we can, well, maybe what I want to say is like how hopeful I am as a possibility of, living from a place of being more deeply connected to everything that wants to, all the emotions that want to move through us. And the pain and the beauty of that, is, and how there's, it's today, the word that I've been using the most over the last just few days is I feel tender. because it is a feeling of joy. I am, actually expecting a baby in August, little baby boy, and there's just such a sense of joy, and there's also a sense of pain that I'm also experiencing because of some tensions and drama in the family that I'm experiencing. And so just feeling all of that, and just, yeah, Dave, without making it in, bringing the meaning making machine into it, and just allowing it to be, and just to feel, and a sense of acceptance. So to me, the word that's really allowing me to sort of ground myself in this current state is acceptance and allowing of what is.
It's beautiful, Philip. It's beautiful. And that's, so much of my coaching, once I went through and felt all these feelings all the way through, they dissipated. And that was, that was the, I was so resistant. When I lost my job, I felt like it was so unfair. The context for this was, I had spent nearly 15 years with this company. I had made them $20 million, $8 million of profit, including all of my expenses and all the expenses of everybody else. That's a very good profit margin. Honestly, it's decent. It's something in business, one would celebrate that, at least in the business we were in and the business I was doing. And it seemed it was so unfair. That should not have happened to me. That judgment of what should or shouldn't be, especially when it's not matching reality.
Yeah.
I think that was the source of the experience for me.
Well, look at the story right there, Dave. I had made them how much money?
20 million.
So I had made them 20 million. I had made them that. Like, just that story, like, who are you identifying as yourself to be? How dare them fire you? Like, what disrespect, what a lack of seeing everything that you've done, right? Like, just how the pain of that, and in a way, it's like, I don't know how to say this, but it's like, it's the death of that person that had that role and that attachment to that. I am a leader of a great company and I am worthy to work here.
You've hit the nail on the head, Philip. That's exactly what it was. I had mixed up my identity. I'd mixed up who I am with this number, $20 million, this title, global program manager, site manager, whatever the title was, with who I was. And when that went away, I discovered that was who I thought I was. And that the grieving for that person that was no longer there.
Oh yeah.
That was some deep grief. That was difficult to go.
Oh yeah. Well, that is a spiritual awakening. What you experienced there, you got to see what is untrue about your identity that you have been holding on to and living by for your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to grieve there. And the courage and the humility it took for you to even see that.
Thank you. I got that.
Yeah. And the freedom on the other side of it, right?
See, now that is a beautiful thing right there. This was an example of where a conversation did not bring me to that state. Like, I went through what I went through to discover what there was to discover. And and here's the funny thing, people told me this, like, again and again. I had conversations where, like, Dave, it just sounds like you are no longer connected with, this is who you thought you were. You're not that. You're something else. What would you like to create? Beautiful, powerful words, which I couldn't accept in that moment because I was still processing in my body and soul this departure of who I thought I was. So great. But going from that and creating myself with Steve as my document, as who I am, as my declaration, as speaking myself into that instead of forming myself in the who I was, so that I would look good and powerful and worthy in the eyes of others.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to have a friend who was $20 million? Hi, my name's Dave. Actually, I'm you could just call me $20 million because that's how I relate to myself.
Yeah. So tell me about the shift from the pretentious 20 million Dave who shows up with polished shoes to Dave recreated.
Yeah. So through the dark night of the soul, through the valley of the shadow of death, I went from pretentious son of a bitch to who am I? Yeah. I was returned to, I am a child of God. That who I was as a child, and I still choose that. That's part of who I am. To creating myself as my document now, and the document I created with Steve has shifted. Like it's a moving target. It's a live document that reflects where I am and who I am being now, and what I am up to in the world. Right. So can I share this with you?
Oh, please share it. Yes.
Okay. I am endowed with godly vision connected to the spirit of all creation. I am spirit being human. I am seeing as Christ sees, and through me, his love and light emerge. I am a miracle, and I give miraculous value. I am appreciating the miraculous in others. I am loving Penny now and now and now. I am present, serving, and loving. I am generous, generative, and expansive. I am dancing with reality and loving what is. I am creating inspiring futures that forward the self with the capital S. I am listening from and enrolling others in being their greatness. I am receiving massive flows of spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, and monetary energy. I am compassion, and I have no complaints. I am grateful for the future, present, and past. I am healthy, fit, and flexible. I am inspired and act immediately on the nudge. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ as expressed through Dave Orton. I am that no one is worthy of my judgment, and everyone is worthy of my love. And love is, I am that.
Thank you so much, Dave. In your chapter, I read about you talking about your document as a living document, as an aspiration, as a place to come from. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I thank you for letting me share that. That is, you can hear some of the lines that I've borrowed.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word I'm looking for? Acquired. There we go. From Steve Hardison. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And for everyone, steal, use, borrow from whoever to create yourself, because it is you creating you. There are no copyright laws in this particular realm. But speaking more about who I am, this document as aspirations and a place to come from. This is a little bit like a Buddhist koan, right? Because it doesn't make sense to come from a place in the logical default mind. It doesn't make sense to come from a place that you're not already being. Like if I say that I'm an Olympic athlete without having been to the Olympics, at a certain level, the logical mind says, liar. And the beauty of the possibility of being, I am the possibility of being an Olympic athlete. The mind is not challenging that because it's a possibility. It's not the fulfillment of that possibility yet. And coming from that allows an athlete to work towards something while being from that space already. One of the ways that shows up in Western philosophy and Western writings is come from, operate from the end. The way that it appears over with in Eastern philosophy is kind of like in the Tao Te Ching, where they talk about non-action. I think that in the Western mind that doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you look at it from being, like who I am being is great.
Yes.
I don't have to do anything to be that. I can just be that, and then the doing comes from that being. My actions are the fruit of who I am being, and that the fruits are showing up over and over again. And me recognizing when I'm not being that, when the pretentious son of a bitch shows up,
yes,
or the liar shows up, or the road rage guy shows up, noticing that and stepping into being, and coming from being, and coming from blessing, and coming from acknowledging and acknowledgement and loving. That's it. That's how I become the fulfillment of this document.
And Dave, with your permission, I would like to put your document in the show notes of this podcast. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
The more
so,
this is shared, the more powerful
I think
it becomes for me.
The whole thing was really beautiful and powerful. There was one line though that really stuck with me. It was a line about penny and now. Can you say that again?
Yeah. I am loving penny now and now and now.
So simple, so profound. Can you give me an example of how you being I am loving penny now and now and now has shifted your relationship?
Yeah. What shows up for me with that is in the example of, so culturally, I came from a family where the house was very clean. My mother made sure that we kept the house clean, and it was a group effort. One of my younger brothers, his favorite thing to do is to clean the house as a family, which occurs to me as sheer lunacy. He's quite wonderful, actually. But the point was that for him, that was a source of joy. For me, that was a source of suffering. And I hated doing the dishes. I hated, cleaning my room, and until it became the norm, and then it was something that I didn't know I was doing this. I pushed it on others. So when I was in Russia, I was paired up with different other missionaries, and I won the award for the cleanest apartment in the mission like 5 or 6 times, and I was so proud of that. And some of these slobs that came to stay with me for a while, I had to train them up on the right way, the superior way.
Oh yeah. There's the Dave Orton way, and then there's the wrong way.
That's so great that you say that. The president of our mission, the leader over the guy that we all reported to, if you will, he said that exact thing. He was like, now you can do it the way of the Spirit, or you can do it the way of Orton. He said this in front of like 60 missionaries. I was like, what the hell is going on here? If you choose the way of Orton, then you know that and it doesn't matter. It can be, and he listed his name and a couple of the other missionaries' names. It doesn't matter if you're doing it that way. I can guarantee you that is the path of disappointment. And he didn't say it this way. This is how Steve would say it, but only always.
But only always. Oh yeah. Yeah, my wife will tell you, in the kitchen, there's the Philip Bartu way and there's the wrong way. And I'm just like you. And boy, have I had to learn to love. And my document is I lovingly accept all parts of my wife, especially the parts I wish I could change. And the second part is really so important. So, yeah.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. And so with my relationship with Penny, one of the things that I discovered with my first session with Steve was that I lied to Penny all the time. I concealed things. I concealed addictive patterns that I had. I concealed feelings. I concealed. I was presenting what I thought was needed, not what was real, and not who I was really being. And I guess the way of saying that was that with my wife, I was a pretentious son of a bitch.
You were, yeah.
And and that still shows up, and the loving
course.
Penny now is the opportunity that when I come into a room where my expectations are that from childhood, that this room is going to be clean, and there's piles of stuff here and there's other things over there, and it just doesn't bother her, at all. And I'm like, I have a, this is not right. This is not what I signed up for. What the heck is going on here? You should, and everything that follows that is bullshit. That's the moment when stepping into and being from, I am loving Penny now and now and now, and now and now.
So good.
Is a place to come from. And an example of how that shows up is an agreement that's emerged. She washes the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I fold the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
She hates folding clothes. I don't mind it. I enjoy folding clothes. It's kind of a meditative thing for me. And the dishes, I go downstairs and it's like, oh, my goodness, here I am all day up in my office working and coaching and changing the world, and my wife can't even be bothered to do the dishes. Okay. Hello, son of a bitch.
There you go. Yeah.
And to step from that into I'm loving Penny now and now and now.
Yeah.
And it takes me 5 minutes to do the dishes and to feel happy about having done the dishes. And she says, thank you so much for doing the dishes. And sometimes she doesn't. And I'll say, hey, did you notice I did the dishes? So that she'll acknowledge that.
Oh, yeah.
And that can come from love, or that can come from the son of a bitch, that last part.
Yeah. Dave, it's the simple everyday life where this understanding and the way that you create yourself is life-changing. And in my case, Christina does the dishes and I do the cooking. And I noticed this, I made her lunch today and I called her at like, hey, lunch is ready. And she says, coming. Now, when I say lunch is ready, I am plating up the food and ready to serve like I'm in a restaurant and my livelihood depends on it.
Yeah, got it. Lunch for you is a Michelin star event. Got it. Okay, continue.
So lunch is ready. I've put my soul and heart into it. And she's not running down the stairs. She just says, I'm coming. So as I was there waiting, it took her 10 minutes to actually come down. But she didn't say, hey, I need 10 minutes to do something. And I just noticed that in those 10 minutes, I started to entertain the thoughts of my wife doesn't respect me. And I was like, where does that come? I was like, oh my God, that's my mother. Whenever my mother was calling us for, if we didn't run and we weren't there immediately, it's like, you don't respect me. And it's just how I had taken on that belief. And I kind of chuckled to myself and I said, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. And I'm just going to see how long it takes for her. And so I was waiting. And in that moment, all I could do was just kind of engage with the food. So I actually spent 10 minutes seasoning the food and just having this kind of mystical experience with, I was making this chili beans dish and I was just adding this and adding that, tasting it and preparing it and improving it. And I love to cook and I love food. Those were 10 blissful minutes. And I realized that I had a choice to be to feel resentful or to just be creative and love my wife no matter what. And I was just being impatient. And I just got to see that. And I'm so, just so humbled by the simplicity of that.
Well, it's a miracle. Philip. I mean, for a certain value of miracle, you created a miracle in that moment, right? You stepped into being graceful, allowing, accepting, peace, enjoyment, and improvement of the food, which is a soul event for you. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Can I share something with you that just showed up where the first time I ever experienced something like that?
Please.
Or are we out of time?
No. Please.
Okay. So when I was 16 years old, I wanted to take a girl on a date.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I didn't even ask the girl yet, but I didn't have money. I didn't have funds. I didn't have a good source of income at that moment. And so I called up my grandmother and asked if she had any jobs that I could go do for her and earn some money. And she said, absolutely. This garage hasn't been cleaned out in 30 years. You know, your grandfather's been dead for 20 years. Would you please come and clean it out and I'll pay you for that? It's like, yeah, I'll do that. I can totally do that. So the context I was coming from and had created was, I am doing this so that I can have a fantastic time on this date, so that I can, pay for the dance tickets and pay for the, activities and whatever as part of this date. And it's going to be great. So I jumped, on a Saturday, like 5 o'clock in the morning, I jumped in my car and I drove the 3 hours to my grandmother's house. That's, what was it, about 250 miles. So it's, it's a fair distance, even for an American. And I got there and I turned on this song that just moved me and I jumped into the work. And this context of coming from the enjoyment of the date already and the looking forward to enjoying this time with this girl that I had a crush on at that time,
Mm-hmm.
made it, who I showed up there didn't care about the quarter inch of mouse manure that coated several surfaces. It didn't care about the clutter that had just been allowed to be there my entire life. I mean, my whole life growing up, it hadn't been cleaned in 30 years. I was 16. I came onto the scene halfway through the last time this was cleaned. And that's not true. I mean, they straightened things, it's just that was how it occurred for my grandma. But it was messy. Like there was a lot of work to do and a lot of things to go through and rusty implements and knives and different things that just showed up on 30 years of on that small farm that they had. And my grandmother had expected me to not get through it if I had worked 12 hours that day. And from who I was being and the place I was coming from and the experience of joy as I'm cleaning up all this stuff and not even noticing the smell or the or the dangers or not slowing down for any of that, I got that done in 6 hours.
Wow.
And not just, and they weren't 6 hours of suffering. They were 6 hours of joy, of sacred cleaning up mouse manure.
That is a miracle. That is a miracle.
That's a miracle.
Yeah, that's a miracle. Yeah.
And on the other hand, there was a year later, my father asked me to go and help another, one of my uncles to bring in a harvest on a farm that he was running at the time. And I had a chip on my shoulder about this uncle because he had stiffed me $20. Mm-hmm. And, he was no longer worthy of my love. He was worthy of my judgment is how he showed up for me. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go. You can't make me go. Well, he could make me go. And he was like, look, David, this is work that needs to be done. And happy or sad, you're going to do it. I'm like, fine, but you can't make me enjoy it. So I was grumpy and surly and silent for the entire trip there, 2.5 hours there. And then I did the job, drove the truck and pretended to want to be there. And then at the end of the day, we drove back home. So, we went and worked 10 hours and then drove the hours home. It was a long day, 15-hour day. And on the way home, my dad's like, so tell me about your experience. Like, it was miserable. this sucked. It was horrible. He's like, yeah, you decided that it was going to be that way when I asked you to come, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah. So I've gotten to experience the created positive and the created negative. And one, they're both miracles, just of a different, through a different lens or through the different sides of the mirror, if you will.
So good. So good.
Thank you for letting me share that.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Dave, we're getting to the end of our time together. It's been an absolute delight to hear your stories and your shifts in being. And thank you for sharing all of that. Is there anything that you would like to say before we complete?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, for the conversation, for who you're being, and who I get to show up in your listening as. There's the beauty of the group for me and this book, and who I get to be and who I choose to be and who I create myself as, is being a great one. And the fastest path that I can tell to being a great one is to declare it, and then to surround yourself with people who are also great ones. And that's who you and the people in the group show up for me as. That's, I acknowledge you for being a great one.
Beautiful.
And
thank you.
By so doing, I get to be a great one too. So thank you. That's what I wanted to share.
And for those that are listening and want to know more about Dave and how to get in touch with you and to know more about potential for them to be great one, where can we direct them to?
I have a website. Facebook is probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. And my email is daveorton@gmail.com. And I have a website that is 5daystownyourlife.com. And it has some testimonials and some other things there. That's one of the programs that I've run in the past. I'll probably run it again too. But it's I'm going to recreate it from the context of the power of being. But that's kind of, that's how you can get to reach out to me.
Well,
and by the way, I'd like to give an invitation. If you would like to be acknowledged by me, or if you'd like to be have an interaction, if you're in the group, just say, hey, Dave, tag me, say, Dave Orton, would you please acknowledge me? And I will.
And I've seen you do that so beautifully and so masterfully. So there you go. The invitation is there to connect with Dave. We're going to put your website in the show notes as well. And once again, thank you so much for everyone who's been joining us today. And if there's anything that you heard or that you want to share, Dave and I would love to hear from you. So with that, have a beautiful day. And Dave, thank you.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you for listening. If you know someone who would benefit from today's conversation, please share this podcast with them. Also, we invite you to visit theultimatecoachbook.com so you can continue your personal exploration of being. There you will find links to join our wonderful community, get your own copy of the Ultimate Coach book, and more. Simply go now to www.theultimatecoachbook.com. That's www.theultimatecoachbook.com. The link is also available in the show notes. We appreciate your support. Be blessed. Be you.